Behind the technicolor robes and rock opera grandeur of this biblical epic lies a treasure trove of bizarre production stories, from accidental shepherds and destroyed props to pornographic career pivots and marijuana-smoking studio executives. What you thought you knew about this controversial 1973 film barely scratches the surface of the wild truths hiding in the Israeli desert. Here are the 15 weird facts you didn't know about Jesus Christ Superstar. Fact 1. Ted Neely got cast without auditioning. Getting the lead role in a major Hollywood production usually requires multiple auditions, screen tests, and callbacks. But Ted Neely's path to playing Jesus Christ happened in one of the strangest ways imaginable. The story begins when Neely's agent invited director Norman Jewison to watch him perform in a stage production of The Who's Tommy at the Aquarius Theater in Hollywood back in 1973. Jewison, who was preparing to film Jesus Christ Superstar in Israel, drove all the way from Palm Springs to Los Angeles, specifically to see Neely perform. However, when Jewison arrived at the theater that night, Neely wasn't there because he had taken a break due to illness. The next morning, Neely learned that the director he was supposed to impress had come to see him and left disappointed. Panicked about missing this crucial opportunity and knowing that Jewison would soon be leaving for Israel to begin filming, Neely decided to drive immediately to Jewison's hotel in Palm Springs to apologize in person. When he showed up at the motel, Neely was still wearing regular Levi's jeans and had glued on a fake mustache and beard as part of some kind of disguise or costume. Director Norman Jewison later described the moment as hysterical, saying Neely sat there with glue and the fake beard, but his eyes were burning and intense, just piercing right through him. The two men talked for about 20 minutes in that hotel room, and without ever seeing Neely sing a single note or perform any part of the role, Jewison turned to his production partner Pat Palmer and said he had a hunch that he had found their Jesus. That bizarre morning meeting secured Neely the most iconic role of his career. Fact 2. The temple scene, destroyed in 2, takes one of the most intense and memorable sequences in Jesus Christ Superstar is the temple scene, where Jesus violently overturns tables and smashes through the marketplace filled with merchants and money changers. What most viewers don't realize is that director Norman Jewison only had enough props to film this chaotic scene exactly 2 times before everything was completely destroyed. Ted Neely threw himself into the role with such unrestrained physical energy that he demolished nearly every breakable item on set during each take. The scene required dozens of carefully arranged props, including tables, pottery, baskets, fabrics, and various marketplace goods that needed to look authentic and break realistically when Jesus tears through the corrupt temple merchants. According to interviews with the cast and crew, Neely performed the scene like he was channeling every ounce of righteous anger the character would have felt, smashing and overturning everything in his path with genuine force and intensity. He later joked that he got to come in and play Clint Eastwood, destroying everything in sight. The production team had stockpiled what they thought would be enough props for multiple takes and different camera angles, which is standard practice in filmmaking since directors typically want options during the editing process. However, after Neely's first explosive take, the crew realized they had dramatically underestimated how thorough his destruction would be. They quickly reset and prepared for a second attempt, but after that second take, there simply weren't enough unbroken props remaining to film the scene again. Fortunately for everyone involved, Jewison managed to capture everything he needed from those 2 takes, getting all the necessary camera angles and emotional intensity required to make the scene work in the final film. Fact 3. Deep Purple's Ian Gillan demanded $250,000. Before Ted Neely became the face of Jesus Christ Superstar on film, the role was actually offered to Ian Gillan, the legendary lead vocalist of the rock band Deep Purple. Gillan had already played Jesus on the original 1970 concept album version of Jesus Christ Superstar, and his powerful rock vocals helped make that album a massive international success, reaching #1 on the Billboard charts in the United States. When director Norman Jewison began casting for the film adaptation in the early 1970s, it seemed natural to offer Gillan the chance to reprise his role on the big screen. According to Gillan himself, he received a call from Tim Rice asking him to record his vocals for the original album after Rice was impressed with his performance on the Deep Purple song Child in Time, and Gillen had managed to record all of his parts in just 3 hours. However, when it came time to discuss the film, Gillen's demands became a major sticking point in negotiations. He insisted on being paid £250,000 for his role in the movie, which was an enormous sum of money at the time. But his financial requirements didn't stop there, because Gillen also demanded that the producers pay his entire band, Deep Purple, since the filming schedule would directly conflict with a scheduled tour the group had already planned. What made this demand particularly unusual was that Gillen made it without consulting his manager first. The film producers found these terms completely unacceptable and quickly declined his offer, choosing instead to move forward with other casting options. Gillen remained with Deep Purple and continued touring, while the role of Jesus eventually went to Ted Neely, who became synonymous with the character for decades to come. Fact 4. The Apostle Peter became a legendary porn director. Of all the unexpected career paths taken by the cast members of Jesus Christ Superstar, perhaps none is more surprising than that of Philip Tubus, who played the Apostle Peter in the 1973 film. Tubus came from a wealthy family in Winnetka, Illinois, and was actually the nephew of Sarah Lee Lubin of the famous Sara Lee Foods Company. Before landing the role of Peter, he had already established himself as a legitimate stage actor, performing in the original Broadway production of Hair and appearing in both the stage version and touring production of Jesus Christ Superstar, where he played various male roles before director Norman Jewison cast him as Peter in the film. After completing Jesus Christ Superstar, Tubus signed with the prestigious William Morris Agency and moved to Hollywood, where he appeared in several television shows and seemed poised for a mainstream acting career. However, in 1974, just 1 year after the film's release, Tubus made a dramatic career change that would define the rest of his professional life. He met the Mitchell brothers, who were prominent adult film producers, while performing in a musical in San Francisco, and soon began working in the adult entertainment industry under the stage name Paul Thomas. What started as a few small projects quickly evolved into a prolific career spanning several decades. As Paul Thomas, he appeared in over 500 adult films and went on to direct nearly 300 more, becoming one of the most respected figures in the adult film industry. His work earned him 7 Adult Video News Awards and 2 X-Rated Critics Organization Awards for Best Director, and he was eventually inducted into multiple Halls of Fame, including the XRCO Hall of Fame in 1986. Fact 5. Caiaphas retired to manage a zipper factory. Bob Bingham had one of the most unexpected post-Hollywood career trajectories of anyone in the Jesus Christ Superstar cast. Bingham played Caiaphas, the powerful high priest who conspires against Jesus, and his deep, resonant bass voice made him unforgettable in the role. What makes his story so unusual is that despite having an incredibly successful stage career, Jesus Christ Superstar was the only feature film he ever made in his entire life. Before landing the role of Caiaphas, Bingham had been a college student in Seattle who dropped out to pursue acting and ended up in a touring production of the musical Hair. A friend suggested he audition for Jesus Christ Superstar, and he created the role of Caiaphas in the original concert tour before going on to perform it in the original Broadway production, which ran from 1971 to 1973, and even in a Paris production. When the film version was being cast, he reprised his Broadway role alongside several other stage performers. However, after the movie's release and one more stage role in 1974, where he played God in Arthur Miller's original production of Up from Paradise in Ann Arbor, Michigan, Bingham made the surprising decision to retire from show business altogether. Instead of pursuing more acting opportunities in Hollywood or continuing his successful theater career, he took a completely different path and became the chief operating officer at a Talon zipper factory, where he worked in management for many years. He later admitted in interviews that during the filming in Israel, he didn't even know basic filmmaking terminology, like what it meant to take a mark, and the crew had to shoot the scaffolding scene about a dozen times until they got it right. Fact 6. The shepherd in the final shot was completely unplanned. One of the most spiritually powerful images in Jesus Christ Superstar happens in the very last moments of the film, when the camera slowly pulls back from the empty cross silhouetted against the setting sun, and a lone shepherd can be seen walking across the desert floor with his flock. For decades, viewers have interpreted this as a deliberately crafted symbol of the resurrection, representing Jesus as the Good Shepherd returning to tend his followers. However, according to both Ted Neely and director Norman Jewison, this profound moment was never planned, scripted, or intentionally staged. The shepherd was actually a local Bedouin who somehow wandered onto the set during filming despite the area being blocked off for the production. The crew was filming the final sunset shot when this figure appeared walking across the frame at the base of the hill where the crosses stood. According to Ted Neely, who discussed this moment at various screenings and appearances over the years, the filmmakers only discovered what had happened when they watched the footage later. He explained that it was not planned, and they only knew about it once they saw the reel, describing the moment as truly unplanned and giving him goosebumps whenever he thought about sharing this story. Director Norman Jewison confirmed this account at a question-and-answer session, specifically noting that a Bedouin wandered onto the set even though it was blocked off, and the crew decided to keep rolling. When Jewison and his team saw the footage, they were struck profoundly by the timing and symbolism of a shepherd crossing the field at that exact moment, especially given the significance of shepherds in Christian teachings. They decided to keep the shot exactly as it happened, giving audiences a subtle depiction of the resurrection that came from pure chance. Fact 7. John Travolta auditioned for Jesus at age 17. Long before John Travolta became a household name dancing in a white suit in Saturday Night Fever or singing and dancing as Danny Zuko in Grease, he was a 17-year-old aspiring actor from New Jersey trying to land his breakthrough role. In the early 1970s, when casting was underway for the film version of Jesus Christ Superstar, the young Travolta auditioned for the lead role of Jesus Christ, hoping to make his mark in what was expected to be a major Hollywood production. At that point in his career, Travolta was relatively unknown and didn't have the credits or experience that would later make him a star, so it's not surprising that he didn't get the part. The role eventually went to Ted Neely, who had extensive stage experience and had already understudied the role on Broadway. However, what makes this story particularly interesting is that producer Robert Stigwood saw something special in the young Travolta during that audition, even though he wasn't right for this particular role. Stigwood made a mental note to remember this talented teenager for future projects, recognizing potential that others might have overlooked. 4 years later, in 1977, that decision paid off in a major way when Stigwood cast Travolta as Tony Manero in Saturday Night Fever, the role that would launch him into superstardom and define disco-era cinema. The film became a massive cultural phenomenon and earned Travolta his first Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. It's fascinating to imagine how different both films and Travolta's career might have been if he had actually landed the role of Jesus, potentially missing out on the iconic performance that made him famous and changed the trajectory of his entire life in Hollywood. Fact 8. The studio executive got high and approved the film. Hollywood studio oversight usually involves executives carefully reviewing footage, checking budgets, and ensuring productions stay on schedule. But the monitoring visit for Jesus Christ Superstar took an unexpectedly relaxed turn. Universal Studios sent executive Ned Tannen to Israel to check on the production and make sure everything was running smoothly, which was standard procedure for a film being shot on location far from the studio's headquarters. However, Tannen's timing couldn't have been worse because he arrived on Yom Kippur, one of the holiest days in the Jewish calendar, when the entire Israeli crew had 3 days off to observe the high holy days. When Tannen showed up expecting to see a bustling film set, he was surprised to find absolutely no one working and no production activity happening whatsoever. According to director Norman Jewison's own account of what happened, Tannen never actually saw any of the footage he was supposed to review or evaluate the progress of the filming. Instead, he ended up just hanging out with Jewison for those few days, and during that time, the two of them smoked marijuana together. When Tannen returned to Hollywood and reported back to Universal Studios, he told them that the production was on schedule and that the footage he had seen was terrific, even though he hadn't actually watched any of it. Jewison later recounted this story with obvious amusement, remarking that the Jordanian marijuana must have been great, suggesting that the quality of the local cannabis had perhaps influenced Tannen's very positive but completely uninformed report to the studio. This anecdote perfectly captures the loose, relaxed atmosphere that sometimes characterized film productions during the 1970s when the industry operated quite differently than it does today. Fact 9. Ted Neely met his wife on set. Among the many life-changing moments that happened during the filming of Jesus Christ Superstar in the Israeli desert, one of the most personally significant for Ted Neely had nothing to do with his performance as Jesus and everything to do with meeting the woman who would become his life partner. During production, Neely met Lee Granger, who was working on the film as one of the background dancers in the ensemble cast. If you watch the Simon Zealots scene carefully, you can actually spot her among the performers, a brunette woman dressed in brown who dances energetically during this high-energy musical number that celebrates Jesus as a potential revolutionary leader. The chemistry between Neely and Granger clearly extended beyond their time on set in 1973 because their relationship continued to develop after filming wrapped and the cast returned to their regular lives. 8 years later, on May 1, 1981, Ted Neely and Lee Granger were married, cementing a romance that had begun in one of the most unlikely settings imaginable, filming a rock opera about the final days of Jesus Christ in the deserts of Israel. Their marriage has now lasted for over 4 decades, making them one of the more enduring Hollywood couples to come out of 1970s cinema. They have 2 children together and have built a life that continues to revolve around Neely's ongoing association with Jesus Christ Superstar, as he has continued to perform the role in various touring productions throughout his career. Leon has remained supportive of his work, and their love story serves as a reminder that film sets can sometimes become the backdrop for real-life connections that last far longer than the production itself. Fact 10. Gethsemane was nailed in one take. The song. Gethsemane is widely considered the most difficult and emotionally intense musical moment in Jesus Christ Superstar, requiring the performer to convey Jesus' anguish and doubt, while also hitting incredibly challenging high notes that push even the most skilled vocalists to their absolute limits. The climax of the song features a sustained G above high C, which is an extraordinarily high note for a male singer, and requires exceptional vocal control, breath support, and technique to execute properly. Most directors would expect to film this kind of demanding sequence multiple times, both to capture different emotional interpretations and to ensure they have a usable take if the vocalist struggles with the technical demands. However, according to Rob Iskov, who served as the film's choreographer, Ted Neely delivered a performance so perfect on his very first attempt that no additional takes were necessary. Neely managed to nail every aspect of the scene in that single take, hitting all the emotional beats while also delivering those famous soaring high notes with power and precision. This achievement becomes even more impressive when you consider the challenging conditions under which the film was shot, including the oppressive heat of the Israeli desert and the physical exhaustion that came from performing such an intense role day after day. Neely himself later described Gethsemane as the most physically demanding scene he performed in the entire production, with the intense heat making everything that much more difficult. The fact that he could deliver such a flawless vocal and dramatic performance under those circumstances, capturing lightning in a bottle on the first attempt, speaks to both his exceptional talent as a performer and his deep connection to the material. Fact 11. Barry Dennen wore torturous platform shoes. While filming in the grueling heat of the Israeli desert presented numerous challenges for the cast of Jesus Christ Superstar, Barry Dennen, who played Pontius Pilate, faced an additional and completely unexpected source of suffering that had nothing to do with the weather. In interviews about the production, Dennen revealed that the worst thing he had to endure during the entire shoot, above and beyond the oppressive heat and other hazards of filming on location, were the shoes he had to wear for his character. The costume designers apparently wanted to make Pilate appear taller and more imposing, so they decided to create special platform shoes to boost Dennen's height. However, instead of making normal platform shoes with a gradual lift distributed evenly throughout the sole, the designers created footwear that was 4 inches tall at the heel and almost completely flat at the toe. This bizarre construction meant that Dennen was essentially forced to walk on his toes throughout his scenes, which would have been uncomfortable enough on a flat, stable surface. Unfortunately, many of Pilate's scenes were filmed on the side of steep inclines in the rocky Israeli terrain, making the situation exponentially more difficult and dangerous. Denon had to navigate these treacherous slopes while balancing precariously on his toes in shoes that were clearly not designed with the actor's comfort or safety in mind. The physical strain of maintaining this unnatural posture for hours during filming, combined with the need to deliver his lines and hit his marks while concentrating on not twisting an ankle or falling, made the shoes a constant source of pain and anxiety throughout production, overshadowing even the challenging environmental conditions that the rest of the cast was dealing with. Fact 12. Every cast member made their film debut. What makes Jesus Christ Superstar particularly remarkable from a casting perspective is that it served as the first film credit for nearly the entire ensemble, marking the cinematic debut for almost everyone who appeared on screen. Out of the entire cast, only 2 actors had previous film experience: Barry Denon, who played Pontius Pilate, and Josh Mostel, who played King Herod. Every other performer in the movie, from the lead roles down to the supporting players and ensemble members, was stepping in front of a film camera for the very first time in their careers. This is especially surprising given that many of these actors had extensive and impressive stage experience before being cast in the film. Ted Neely had been performing professionally for years and had understudied the role of Jesus on Broadway, while Carl Anderson had similarly understudied Judas and eventually took over the role when Ben Vereen fell ill during the original stage production. Yvonne Elliman had performed Mary Magdalene on both the original concept album and on Broadway, and Bob Bingham had created the role of Caiaphas in the concert tour and Broadway production. Despite all this theatrical experience and proven talent in live performance, none of them had ever made a feature film before director Norman Jewison cast them. This meant that the production was essentially filled with stage veterans who had to learn the unique demands of film acting on the job, including understanding technical aspects like hitting marks for the camera, maintaining continuity between takes, and adjusting their performances for the more intimate medium of cinema compared to the larger gestures and projection needed for theater. The fact that the film turned out as well as it did is a testament to both their natural talent and Jewison's skill at directing first-time film actors. Fact 13. Jewison considered rock legends for Jesus. Before Ted Neely landed the role that would define his career, director Norman Jewison was dreaming much bigger and considering some of the most famous rock stars in the world to play Jesus Christ. Casting notes that Jewison wrote on stationery from the Beverly Hills Hotel reveal just how ambitious his initial vision was for the lead role. According to these notes, Jewison seriously considered approaching Mick Jagger, the legendary frontman of the Rolling Stones, as well as both John Lennon and Paul McCartney from the Beatles, 2 of the most famous musicians on the planet at that time. His list also included Barry Gibb from the Bee Gees, Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin, and Ian Gillan from Deep Purple, who had already played Jesus on the original 1970 concept album. This list reads like a who's who of rock and roll royalty from the early 1970s, representing some of the biggest names in music during that era. The fact that Jewison was thinking about these megastars shows that he understood the rock opera nature of the material and wanted someone who could bring authentic rock credibility to the role while also being able to handle the dramatic and spiritual weight of playing Jesus Christ. However, none of these legendary musicians ended up taking the part, whether because they weren't interested, weren't available, had scheduling conflicts with their bands, or simply couldn't commit to a film production that would take them away from their music careers for an extended period. In the end, Jewison went in a completely different direction by casting Ted Neely, a stage performer with the vocal chops and dramatic ability to handle the role, even though he lacked the instant name recognition that any of those rock superstars would have brought to the project. Fact 14. Israeli fighter jets photobombed the film, one of the most jarring and memorable moments in Jesus Christ. Superstar occurs during a scene where Judas is wrestling with his inner turmoil and conflict over betraying Jesus, when suddenly the roar of fighter jets screaming overhead interrupts the moment, creating a powerful juxtaposition between ancient biblical times and modern warfare. This startling moment feels like such a deliberate artistic choice that most viewers assume it was carefully planned and scripted as part of director Norman Jewison's anachronistic vision for the film, which intentionally mixed historical and contemporary elements throughout. However, the reality is that those jets were never supposed to be there at all. The aircraft that appear in the scene were genuine Israeli military fighter jets that happened to be on a routine patrol mission and flew directly through the shot while filming was taking place. The production had no warning that the jets were coming, and the timing was completely coincidental. Carl Anderson, who played Judas, was genuinely surprised by the sudden appearance and deafening noise of the jets, and his startled reaction in the scene is completely authentic rather than acted. When the crew reviewed the footage and saw what had happened, they realized that this unplanned interruption actually added an incredible dramatic effect to the scene, reinforcing the film's themes about the timelessness of these biblical events and how the story of Jesus continues to resonate through different eras of human conflict and violence. Rather than considering it a ruined take that needed to be reshot, director Jewison and his team loved how the jets enhanced the emotional power of the moment and made the decision to keep it in the final cut of the film, turning an accidental photobomb into one of the movie's most striking and talked about sequences. Fact 15. Pope Paul VI loved the controversial film. Jesus Christ Superstar faced intense criticism from numerous religious groups who condemned it as blasphemous and offensive to Christianity, with protests erupting even before the film's release. Jewish organizations criticized it as anti-Semitic, while some Catholics and Protestants objected to its portrayal of Jesus as a young man who might be interested in romantic relationships, and many religious leaders took issue with the rock opera format being applied to such sacred subject matter. Given this widespread religious backlash, it would have been easy to assume that the highest authorities in the Catholic Church would share these negative views and denounce the film as disrespectful to Christian teachings. However, the reality turned out to be quite different when director Norman Jewison was able to arrange a private screening of Jesus Christ Superstar for Pope Paul VI, the leader of the Catholic Church at that time. After watching the film, the Pope not only enjoyed it, but openly expressed his appreciation for what Jewison and the cast had created. Ted Neely later recalled the Pope's reaction in interviews, remembering that Pope Paul VI told Jewison directly that he not only appreciated the beautiful rock opera film, but that he believed it would bring more people around the world to Christianity than anything ever had before. This was an extraordinarily strong endorsement from the head of the Catholic Church, especially considering all the controversy surrounding the movie. The Pope was particularly moved by Mary Magdalene's song, "I Don't Know How to Love Him," which he described as having an inspired beauty that deeply resonated with him spiritually. This papal blessing gave the film a level of legitimacy and validation that helped counter some of the religious criticism it faced from other quarters.